Hello, this is Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 4 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for your support so far, and your likes and shares and things like that. It's pretty cool. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the Caroline Flack incident where she took her own life. We haven't recorded since then, so it's obviously a big story. There was I don't really know her work that well. I know she's obviously a TV presenter, and a lot of people, especially on big TV shows that she did, so people followed her on social media, things like that. There was a bit of problems with it. Was, I suppose, that the media built up, and social media built up around the incident that happened between herself and her partner. So it's okay to feel conflicted about that, but at the same time, it's the ending of her life. That's the tragic part. And there's two things I want to touch on. She did share a meme, which was, if you can be one thing in the world, be nice. It's such a heartening, kind of lovely message to put out there. But I suppose what's disheartening about it is that we have to say it at all, like that you have to remind people to be nice, as if it's something you have to go out your way for. It's kind of strange, really. But when people put it up on their social media accounts about be nice, on their profile pictures, things like that, obviously it's a good thing. The second thing I want to talk about really is, when I was like 12 years of age, Kurt Cobain was my idol. He was like a proper hero to me, and I remember I saw on Sky News the day that he took his own life. And what happened kind of after that, I remember watching the news. Kurt Loder, I think, was the TV presenter at the time, the MTV presenter, and they were talking about copycat killings and things like that. And these things come with, now I'm not saying that Caroline Flack and Kurt Cobain were on the same kind of level. It's different because he was a rock star, and she, being a TV presenter, wouldn't have had maybe so many people seeing her as an idol. It's Kurt Cobain was that voice of the generation kind of thing, voice of his generation, should say. But in Caroline Flack's case, there's going to be like a ripple effect from her death. Young people, be they teenagers or young adults, they will see somebody who had it all, and she was driven to what she did, to take her own life. But young people may not align those two things. They may just see it as someone who took their own life, and it was someone maybe they looked up to. They wanted to be in that position themselves, and they may, if they have underlying problems, whether it might be something like depression or body dysmorphia. There's so many things, and we all know what they are. They might feel that, well, if it wasn't enough for her, like, what do I have? So the most important thing, and the thing I want to reach out to people, is to talk to young people about her death, especially if they come to you and ask. It's not a taboo subject. It shouldn't be a taboo subject. It's especially for people my age. I'm 37, so for people my age and older, and even younger, the whole point of it is, you're the adult. People are reaching out to you. You're setting that example. They might need that support. They might need that little talk before they can come to terms with someone in such a high profile job taking their own life. So obviously, once again, it's about being kind to people, and obviously, rest in peace, Caroline Flack. So I suppose the transition from that, it's not exactly an easy one, but I have another guest on today. My second guest. He is a pharmacist and a nutritionist, and more importantly, he's a friend of mine. And his name is Josh Chanin. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
very excited.
Good to see you. Good to see you in the chair. It's if people have seen the social media, the chair is like one of those director's chair, but I kind of messed it up there recently, called it the dictator's chair. So in that case, I probably should be sitting in it, but you're sitting in it because I've got this like comfortable little office chair here. Like,
It's comfortable.
it's nice, is it?
Yeah, I
cool.
like it.
So listen, just give us a short history about your upbringing, where you're from, because there's a little bit of melody in your accent that's not quite a Midland thing.
Not quite,
Ireland.
no. So I was born on Wirral. It's actually, I was born at the hospital where they're detaining the possible coronavirus victims in Arrow Park. That's where I was born. Grew up obviously on Wirral. So that's, and my parents are from the south, so it's more of a confused accent. It's not a strong Liverpool accent, so it's a mixture of the two. And then I went to university in Liverpool, and that's when it really thickened up. So it has a bit more of a Scouse twang to it. And then I've been living in Ireland for 2 years now.
Nice. When you came to Ireland, first of all, no, let me just ask you this question because I should. What brought you to Ireland?
Lack of job, I suppose, because there's full-time jobs as a pharmacist in the UK, but I liked the locum existence where you can sort of pick your own hours. You're basically a contractor, and I much preferred that. And that wasn't really becoming an option anymore. The money was dropping. Lots of government cuts, and my wife already had a life set up here before she moved to the UK and we got married. And so it was just an easy transition, really, to come over, and it's worked well.
It's worked well. That's good. You are a pharmacist, obviously. Talk to me about, because when I see something like that with the shirt and the tie and all, and you being obviously the pharmacist on site at that moment, what are the pressures of the job like?
The biggest pressure is probably patients, as in the patients want, they're not patient.
Not your patient. Yeah, okay.
So they want the medication very fast.
Yeah.
They don't want to hang around for it because obviously everyone's busy. Our lifestyles are much faster now, so we try and do everything as efficiently as possible. So no one seems to have time. And that becomes a pressure, and that's a constant pressure that you have to, because obviously I can't rush the job.
Yeah.
Because the level of errors, human nature and human error always play a factor. So I have to slow everything down, and I'm still working on it all the time because the option to freak out and panic is always there. Yeah. But I just have to slow everything down because if I slow down and move more slowly, it might add 20 seconds to the prescription, but it means the medication is going to be safe. It's going to be the right medication, because it's not until you're in that position you realize how many variables and how many errors could happen. Yeah. It looks like, you just take a tablet off a shelf, and it does look like that. And obviously there is a joke that that's pretty much all we do. We just count Smarties out. But there's so many clinical things to consider, and that's from a clinical point of view. But then from the amount of errors that could be made just from a picking error to a labeling error. So it could be spelt wrong. The directions could be wrong. There could be an old prescription, the strengths could be wrong. So there's not an infinite number, but there's thousands of errors that can happen. And you get better at recognizing the proper ones. But that pressure on, if you make an error, it's you versus, the system, I suppose. Yeah. The patient's not going to care. So there is that sort of, they'll have to wait, because it's more important that this is done safely, as opposed to gaining a 30-second. So the script's out in 30 seconds less. That's not as important as their health. So it's constantly reminding it, and that's probably the biggest pressure, is trying to stay calm, because and it's a 9-hour shift is probably that's the going sort of shift, and you don't get a lunch break. You might get 20 minutes to inhale some food. And so as you've gone through the day, by hours 7, 8, 9, you've really got to concentrate and remind yourself, actually, you can't, this can't start to slip. And it is a stressful job from that point of view. But it's still rewarding because you are helping.
But, okay, so I know you quite well. So I know you in big 2 years, a bit over 2 years now. And you like me, are a bit of a worrier. You worry about things, and how does that affect how you think on the job? Because obviously when I go into the chemist with my prescription, it's 8 or 9 items. I think it's 8 items. So it's a lot of pressure. And like you say, if it gets messed up, there's some serious, like there could be serious impacts on your professional life. So when you're in the middle of that storm, if it is a particularly busy day, like what's the when I talk about the worries that you have, how does that add to the pressure, or does it help with the pressure that you're almost overthinking what you should be doing?
I think because obviously I've been qualified for 5-6 years now, so you eventually reach a point where you know the common errors, you know what to look for, you have a procedure that you can do without, almost without thinking. So you go through the process every time, and that comes down to discipline. Because if you do the same process every single time, you won't make any errors. And then there does every time have to be 5-10 seconds of right, what's it for, what's it treating, what's it interact with, what are the dangers, anything I need to talk to the patient about, anything clinical, anything counseling, have they seen the doctor recently? Because sometimes it can be months, 6 months before since they've seen a doctor. So do I need to discuss anything with them? So I suppose from that point of view, I don't really get a chance to think or worry about that. You kind of just you focused on that part.
Is it one of those jobs that you can chill out with when you go home, or do you take it home with you? Depends on the day, I suppose, is it?
It's a mixture, really. The reason I like locuming is because I can just leave it at home. So I go in, I deal with the waiters, or they're the patients that are coming in as and when. They're not the sort of blisters or the regular patients. They come in with a script, and I'll do those. Sorry, I'm coughing a lot.
That's all right.
So hang on, what was the question again?
Can you go home? Can you chill out?
Yeah. So that's why I like locum, because I can go in, do my job, and then go home, and I don't have to worry too much. Now, obviously, if you're in the same place constantly, or you move more into a managing role or an organising role, you do take it home. Yeah. Because right, I need to do this tomorrow. I need to get that sorted. I need to make sure I do this. I need to chase that up. I need to follow that up. And there's also sometimes the worry: did I make an error there?
Yeah.
Did they get too much? Those sorts of things. But again, you have to just sort of you roll with the punches. You just think you can worry. As I say, the options to worry are always there. But it's kind of, I think if you think too much about that specific thing, you can't do the job. Yeah. There does reach a point where you're like, well, I've done my best.
It's not for you.
What will be, will be.
Yeah. And you have to listen to me moaning all the time, like, and because
it's a joy.
Yeah, thanks. We talk quite a lot about. We talk a lot about mental health in general, like obviously because I obviously can get mine off my chest and stuff like that. Like, what for you? Can you tell the difference between worry and anxiety? Because there is a big difference. Because you can worry about something that's going to happen tomorrow. It happens and it's gone. But anxiety is something that can go before it and after it and carry on.
Yeah.
So can you tell the difference between the two? Because I know you
in myself.
In yourself, yeah.
Yeah, I would say because I definitely can, because but it is difficult, because I'd say worry is you thinking about something.
Yeah.
Whereas anxiety is you can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
And I say it's just an extreme version of worrying. I think a lot of people may mislabel worrying as anxiety.
Yeah.
Which isn't the worst thing. I think the fact that we all talk about anxiety now, and it's almost, not quite, but it's almost cool. Which is a good thing, because to a degree, because it gets people talking about it, and it makes it makes people with real serious anxiety less scared to talk, more accepted. But I think there can sometimes be a tendency to label I'm worried as I have serious anxiety, which there's an attention-seeking side to it, which isn't great. But
no,
it happens. But
it's good. Like, that's the point. I was chatting to a couple of lads the other day in training, and we were talking about the difference in what people have, and not just anxiety, but things like depression and stuff. That sometimes it's worry, or sorry, it's not. It's sadness. At a certain thing that might carry on. It could be something as small as like your team lost a football match, and then all of a sudden it carries on because maybe something bad happens the next day and the next day. And I'm not saying that that person's doing anything wrong. It's just that they don't know the difference between the two. So, you know, you never want to self-diagnose. You never want to diagnose people from afar, right? Either, because you could misinterpret the other way too. Obviously, that someone could actually be depressed, and you're just thinking, "I don't mind him," you know, or "Don't mind her. She's like that," you know. And that is a worry. Like for you, like whether it's in your life or whether it's someone belonged to you, when was mental health? When did it become a thing? When was it noticeable to you?
I suppose my own mental health, it wasn't really. That wasn't what I noticed first. First, when I was about 14, I became obsessed with figuring things out. I had to know how everything worked.
Okay.
And then trying to figure out people were like, why do they do what they do? Why do, you know, those sorts of decisions, what motivates them, those sorts of things. I just became obsessed with it. And since then I've studied psychology and philosophy, to close to an obsessive kind of constantly thinking about it, constantly trying to figure it out. I mean, I can't even enjoy a film without breaking it down psychologically and philosophically. So that around teenagers when I became aware of psychology and mental health as a thing, I suppose, really like started to consider it. But I'd never considered my own mental health really. I don't know why. I just thought, I suppose if you've not known any different, you've nothing to compare it to. So I would say, I mean, pharmacy was probably part of it.
Really?
So, you know, constantly coming home sort of fried, like you're on edge constantly. That was when the sort of, it was a bit, because it is a stressful job, particularly when you start and when it's all on you. It takes years to get used to that. I'm still trying to get used to it now, but I suppose that's when it first started to happen. So around early 20s, it was kind of, I just thought it was normal though, because I'd always worked, you know, almost 7 days a week. That's just what I'd always done, because that's what my parents did. So you just carry on that sort of pattern. So, you know, I used to study all the time, and then in uni it was, you were constantly working, and if you weren't working, you were actually in the pharmacy learning. So 6 days a week was fine. But then I'd notice I'd come home and have a drink. You know, just one whiskey, just to sort of take away an extra hour required to relax. A whiskey would do it. And you could see that slippery slope sort of thing. You could. I was just like, all right, this is why you hear of doctors and healthcare professionals drinking, because you do bring it home with you. And so I suppose that was when I first noticed what anxiety felt like, and what, because it's constant and it gets worse and you're constantly exhausted. It's not just worry, I need to do this, I need to do this. It's just like you're just always on edge. And then I suppose it's sort of changed over the last few years, but I think I got very anxious, or started to, or I had a weird feeling. Maybe it wasn't anxiety, but it was a very strange feeling. And I couldn't pinpoint it, but it had started when I was in Ireland. I couldn't work out what it was for a few months. And I was starting to debate, right, do I need to start medication, or do I need to see a doctor, or do I need to see a therapist, or, because I obviously, as you say, it's not great to self-diagnose, but you still try. And I sort of just booked a trip home, and then almost as soon as I got on the road, the feeling disappeared. And I felt great again.
So you hate Ireland?
So my confidence came back, and it was kind of like, oh, it's because Ireland doesn't feel like home. But I've never been away long enough from home, i.e. the UK. I mean, Ireland isn't amazingly different, but, you know, I don't have my family here.
Of course,
I've not a huge group of friends. Obviously, jiu-jitsu is a massive help. That's one of the reasons I started, was because I thought, right, I need to get into the community. I need to start making friends. And it's a great place for me to go. And I love it for that reason, or one of the main reasons. I just love the people that are there. So I never realised that it was a lack of feeling home. So now I make sure I go home more. But it's kind of, it's not pleasant when you're going through those sorts of things. No, because you don't know where to turn.
That's true, and it is like, as you said, you can't switch it off. Like it's always there. Where, and this is where the kind of cuteness comes in, because we're going to talk about your son Oscar now. What age is he now?
He is, I'd say he's coming up. He's 10 and a half months, I'd say.
Get this right, or I'll have to add it.
Yeah, I'd say she should be right. She should be raging at me.
Sorry, Martha. I put him on the spot there, though. But I told him I wouldn't. But how does that change? Because obviously I'm not a father, and as far as my responsibilities go, there's not a huge amount. Obviously you're a husband, pharmacist, all those things. But how has your outlook on things now change since Oscar's come along?
I've always wanted to be a dad.
Yeah.
I didn't really know why. I always just sort of had like I bought a watch when I was 25, when I first started making a bit of money, and I bought a watch knowing I'd give it to my son, hopefully, or daughter or whoever.
Yeah.
I'd give it to them one day. So I've always sort of, whenever I'm learning something, so philosophy or psychology or whatever, or something in health, I'll always think, how can I teach this? With the idea of teaching my kids the information. That's what I've always thought. So it's always been there in the background. But that doesn't mean I was ready for it.
Yeah, of course.
So you think. So I suppose in terms of outlook, it certainly focuses what actually matters.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff that I used to think about, I just don't think about anymore. Like you just stop caring about it because you've a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of energy, and it needs to go on family. Because that's my top priority. Yeah. That's more important than work. But that was something I actively did. Whereas, not every father ends up doing that. They see work as somewhere I can win, I can make money at that, and I can bring it home, and that's my responsibility. So work becomes the focus.
Yeah.
Work is obviously important, but I think I'm not. I wouldn't say I love it. I enjoy it, but I don't love it to the point where I would neglect my family for it, or I'd miss out on family time. That comes first. So that's been helpful.
Yeah.
And there's also it's a further motivation of, if I'm going to teach him how to be a man, I need to make sure I'm the type of man that I want him to be. I can't just tell him to do certain things. Yeah. So I have to step up in other areas of my life, which means taking responsibility, taking accountability. If I can do something for Marta, do it. Mm-hmm. If I can help in any way, because they obviously, what the mother does is unbelievable. Like, particularly in the first few months, I mean, I just felt my role was to look after Marta as best I could. Yeah, I didn't do a great job. I tried my best. Still learning.
You'd have to ask Marta.
Yeah, still learning. So now it's kind of, right, what can I do more? How can I lead this family? So that's my main focus, is how to lead the family properly, how to set an example, how to help Marta, look after our own mental health, because obviously it's exhausting. He wakes up every 2 hours, so she's exhausted all the time. So how can I help her mental health, which takes the focus off me, which it might have its own repercussions further down the line if I don't make sure I'm looking after my own needs and my own values. But if they're one of my main values and main needs, they get the focus. So it just focuses you, and you stop worrying about
minor
crap.
Yeah. I think I will say, just not to compare children, but I've met Oscar a few times, and my brother and his wife Reed, they had a baby. I think it was 2 weeks after Oscar, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And the difference between the two, like Adam, he's gorgeous, but he's the most chilled child. You stick him on your lap and that's it. He's done. Like, you just sit there. You might play with a little toy or whatever.
Jealous.
Just now, the difference. Oscar is like running a marathon every day, because you put him on your lap, he's jumping. He's doing bridges out of his pram, all this kind of stuff. I've never seen a child so alive. Yeah. So he never stops. No. So I do salute Marta for what she's.
Well, you'd think if he's always running around, because now he's crawling.
Oh yeah, well that's.
And he is. We put these soft sort of mats out. Ones that Jake. Thank you, Jake.
Cool.
Donated. I've started using those as for him. Yeah. He crawls everywhere but the mats now.
Of course he does.
And it doesn't matter where I put the mats, he just moves over them. And
Adam would just lie on those mats. Yeah. He just lie there.
You'd think, he'll probably sleep now that he's moved around a lot. Just not the case at all. So I did manage to change him this morning.
Did you?
And he didn't try and sit up. But changing him's hilarious because I mean, maybe not for Marta, but it's a 2-man job now, because someone has to distract him and dance with him or do something so he doesn't sit up, because he doesn't want to lie down. That's how energetic he is. He refuses to lie down. And obviously it's a disaster trying to clean a baby.
Every little thing, I'd say, for Oscar is kind of a challenge because of how active he is, you know.
He just can't sit still.
It's fun. It's funny.
It might make school interesting.
It
might make school interesting, but we'll see.
Yeah, for teachers.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, we wait for them. But I like my thing of I always think of children as a kind of, for me, if I was to have a child, and people have said to me, don't be thinking like that, but it's very hard not to, is to think that they might, you know, grow up with depression or something. So there is that kind of thing in the back of my mind that I'll probably always have, that I'll be like, well, maybe you should have kids, because maybe they would, like you said, it focuses you and it makes you not think of the crap. But for me, I just kind of, I'd be so worried that I'm, you know, I'm gonna wreck them from my kind of mental health, that I you know, maybe not have any myself, like, but you know, we all have to kind of make those decisions, you know, ourselves. And people will say, oh no, you should try in that, but Jesus, it's a 21-year commitment. It's more than 21 years.
Yeah.
It never ends, you know. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. That's from my mother, who's giving out my pronunciation.
Train like a warrior.
Like a warrior, not a worrier. Yeah, so you do train like a warrior. See
a bit. No. I'd say more like a warrior.
That's
a warrior.
A quality transition.
It is. I like that. Great segue. He's a professional.
He's getting there. What's your training regime?
It varies sometimes, but I try and make sure I get, you know, have the sort of pillars of my week. So I try and get into jiu-jitsu twice a week, minimum. Ends up most of the time being maximum, because I think that's the most I can get away with in terms of balancing everything. I wish it was more, but there we go. And then I will do a strength training, sort of MMA style kind of weight training. So it's more functional training, and that's how I try and increase my strength. And then sometimes I will try and run, because I find that better for my mental health than physical. But equally, I don't want to lose too much weight. And running seems to cause me to lose a lot of weight for whatever reason. But that is a much more of a mental health focus. And I'd say the whole training is, to be honest, I used to think it was physical, because I've trained since I was 14, 15. I used to think, it's because I want to look this way, or get this strong, or do this feat of athleticism, or whatever it might be. But I'd say in the last 5 years, I've really thought, oh no, it's always been mental. It's always helped me feel better. It's always it felt like I was on top of things. If I could keep training, I keep my life together, kind of thing. That was for some reason, that was just how I felt. So yeah, that it's probably I wish I could train a bit more than I do. But I also try and do some yoga in between and recover, and get improve flexibility. But I think I could never stick with yoga or stretching or anything like that before. But since starting jiu-jitsu, it's just taught me to do things and have a delayed reward. It's just gotten me into that habit.
It's the idea of, like, this could take a while. But
and it definitely will take a while.
Jesus. But we talked about blue belts last week with Martin, and you were giving your blue belts some months ago now, wasn't it?
October it was.
So, like, you know, that was cool. That's another thing I pick up on, because you do talk to me about, you know, when you are feeling a bit down or whatever it might be, training is kind of one of the first things that'll pop into your head, like, and that's for me as well. I'll just give you an example, because the last 2 weeks, because the storms and wet weather and everything, every time I woke up to go for a run, I was like, oh jeez, it's so windy, so wet. And sometimes just looking for an excuse not to, because you might be going training in the evening. But I went for a run this morning, and it was like, you know, the sun was out, it was pretty calm, and it was just when I came back, those endorphins were just flooding, and that I was like, it just reminded me I'm going to have to get back and do two or three runs a week if I can. Maybe not the distance that I'm doing, but you know, if I can. So what came first then for you? Was it the training, or was it the nutrition, or did it come
definitely the training? Definitely training. I didn't really get into nutrition properly until I was probably 19, something like that. and then I knew it played a factor, but I didn't appreciate how much of a factor it played. And it's difficult because nutrition's so incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
Because if you think of the body, it's something like 25,000 different chemical processes.
Yeah.
Something crazy like that. Someone more educated will probably tell me that it's completely the wrong.
This will be the first.
It's actually it's 32.
This will be the first aggressive message I get on Facebook. Yeah.
Actually, it's this. And if you imagine all the different chemicals that are in all the different types of food, and you throw those in to those chemical processes happening in the body, how could it not be insanely complicated?
Yeah.
But I think we've tried to. Because of our psychology, I think we try to simplify everything because, we have to make quick decisions.
Yeah.
Evolutionarily, that made sense. So we make quick decisions. So we don't need all the stuff around the outside. Turns out we do. So, I mean, even, medicine didn't take nutrition seriously until probably the last 10, 15 years. It would just ignore nutrition. It's just kind of, the advice was minimal. It was sort of fruit and veg and that's it really.
5 a day.
Yeah. So I think it's only really recent that nutrition's been such a focus because it has such an impact on people's body composition. But the nutrition definitely came after the training.
How much of an impact can it have on your mental health, good nutrition?
I think it's huge because when you look at, let's say, sugar, for example, or fructose particularly, because I don't want to get too geeky, but
go for it.
Glucose and fructose.
They can always skip forward.
Yeah, true. So sugar is made of glucose and fructose.
Okay.
That's normal table sugar. But so I don't want to get too sciencey because glucose is a sugar.
I want to be sitting here completely
bored. Okay.
No, not comprehending anything that's coming out your mouth.
So like glucose and fructose, they're a sugar from a scientific point of view. They're all sugars. But in terms of what people know, table sugar is fructose and glucose. Glucose, the body deals with a lot more efficiently. Fructose is really bad.
Okay.
You could, because if you look at the work of what's your man's name? It's Professor Richard. No, it's not. I can't remember your man's name.
It's all right. I'll fill it.
We'll put it. Yeah, put it. He was the first one to really research fructose, and he found that it if you look at metabolic syndrome, so you have high blood pressure, diabetes, liver disease as well. If you look at those, you can pin them. You can look at fructose causing all of them. So I used to think fructose would just spike your insulin. So sugar was bad because it spikes your insulin. It doesn't just spike your insulin. That's the first of it. Or spike your blood sugar, and increase your insulin secretion. It's as bad as alcohol is for the liver.
Okay.
In terms of cirrhosis and in terms of overloading the cells. I don't want to get too into it though. I don't want to get crazy into it.
I don't want you to worry about that.
No. So it basically, if you look at how the body deals with fructose, in a very roundabout way, it causes metabolic syndrome.
Okay.
Which is why it's so bad for us. Now, I can't remember my original point.
No, well, it's just what I asked about was the impact on your mental health.
Yes. So one of the main things of fructose is that it seems to, as well as just glucose, it seems to upregulate inflammatory genes.
Okay.
So genes that produce inflammatory markers. And also the byproducts of breaking down sugar and glucose in the brain is inflammatory markers. So if you imagine your experience of the world is through your brain, your mental health is through the brain.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of inflammatory factors in your system, in the brain from the metabolism of sugar or glucose, as well as in your body, you can only imagine what damage that's doing. So it's certainly not going to necessarily be the cause of mental health.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily going to be a treatment of mental health. But it certainly gives you a fighting chance.
Yeah.
If you're training and you're eating correctly, it at least gives you a chance. Because if you can remove a lot of that inflammation by eating the correct types of foods, then you're going to have a chance, more of a chance.
Yeah, but like So basically, and this is kind of things that we kind of all know, throwing all that, whether it's I love cheesecake and things like that, throwing all that into your gob is not. You can have a treat.
You can,
but don't come.
The way I talk to clients about it is, if we know alcohol's bad, but that doesn't mean we start drinking it. It means we know we keep it to evenings, and we keep it to weekends, and we keep it to special, effectively special occasions. And we know if we've had days on end of it, we know our body probably needs a break. The liver needs time to heal, these sorts of things. So in an ideal world, we wouldn't want it.
Yeah.
But realistically, in the culture we have, alcohol, treats and the way the system's set up effectively, you can't not eat bad
it's very difficult.
Drink alcohol every now and then. But I think, you just know to mitigate it.
I think so. As your nutritionist, what is your approach to nutrition for your clients? What are you telling them to do? And obviously it's something that you do, so it's following what because you can't exactly be a very large nutritionist and be telling people to so what's your approach to it for your clients?
I think my approach is to look at it like an art, because I think the temptation is to look at nutrition as if it's as a science. And my theory on art and science is that it's a spectrum. On the one end, you obviously have art, so you can look at something as obvious as painting. We don't know what triggers people's emotion when it comes to painting. We don't really know what makes a good painting. But then you've got science on the other end. Let's say look at engineering and physics. You've no emotion. It's all figures, and we know it back to front. Health sits somewhere along that spectrum. I think psychology sits along that spectrum, closer to the art end, and I think nutrition sits closer to the art end. And I think that's because of how young the study of it is.
Okay.
And I think the more we can understand it and study it, the more it can move towards a science. So the example I like to use is there's a surgeon somewhere in the US who he will not, so it's a cosmetic surgeon, he will not move someone's facial features more than 2 millimeters.
Okay.
Now I would argue that's a science. He's added a science to an art, because it's how someone looks, it's beauty. And he knows 2 millimeters seems to be part of the, that's what, if he moves it more than that, it looks strange.
It looked like a castle painting.
So he has the art down to a science from that point of view. Whereas psychology and nutrition, there's too many variables at this point, and there's so little solid research done on it. And nutrition research, it's pretty bad, all of it, because of the way it's set up. It's too hard to conduct using the methods and the models and the metrics that we have. And we're still debating whether the metrics we use for health are actually the right ones to be using. So, and then what tends to happen is, I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm going to roll it anyway. So the media will take a headline they'll take a piece of research and just say, oh, well, this kills you. So whatever it is, this causes this. And people, because of the reputation of the media outlet that it's coming from, they assume the person who's written the article or reporting on the article knows, first of all, how to really critique scientific research. And that they've done that. And that they're also giving a balanced view. They assume that's all been taken care of. They've done their due diligence, and this is fact, and they're reporting on it. That doesn't happen. The person isn't doing that. They don't really know how to critique scientific research, and the conclusions that they're drawing, they just want you to buy the paper or click the link or whatever it might be. So that really doesn't help, because we just don't know that much about nutrition yet. We know a good bit, and we're sort of moving in the right direction, but you have to look at it like an art. So I have to look at the person's lifestyle, realistically what their motivation is at the moment, what can we ask them to do, what can they fit in. And so it's very tailored. It has to be tailored. Now mine is probably an extreme one, so I like to do low carb keto, and that works very well for me, but that's because of the genetics I have. That's because of how I train. It's the discipline. I have a strange level of discipline that most people don't. So I can sort of seem to be able to force myself to do things I don't necessarily want to do. So it just has to be tailored. The one size fits all, although it would be really nice to have that.
Of course.
And it would be simple. But if it was that simple, we'd all be doing it.
Yeah, and I think, we all have this idea that we can look, you're quite well built lad,
Thanks.
And
nicest compliment you give me.
Come on. I was making serious. No. But I'm not going to be that size. I can't look at you and go, okay, right, well, it'll just take some broccoli and you lift a few more weights. It's ridiculous. But I'm not calling people ridiculous who think that.
Yeah.
Some of us are led to believe that.
Yeah.
And what you call, if you call nutrition goes more towards the art side of things. If you go to the scientific side of it, and the way you see, like, 1 week it'll be like, my dad always goes on about this, that's why I'm going on about it, but 1 week it'd be like, oh, tomatoes are bad for you, don't eat them, and the next week it's like, oh, that they'll cure cancer.
Yeah,
it's the extremes of those things that is very misleading, and it's different for you who studied up on this stuff, but for me it's confusing.
Well, I mean, there was, because obviously, as I said, I've studied it from being 19. I've studied nutrition, but there was a good couple of years when I had no idea what to eat. Like I was so confused by the different ways of, like, directions being pulled in. But then from my own profession of being a scientist and studying pharmacy, you learn to critique papers and you learn to critique research, and that's when you can look at the papers. So you read the headline, you go, right, okay, meat causes cancer. You look at the headline and you look at the piece of research, and the most of the time it's done on observational research. So we're looking at a group of people, two groups of people, and we're kind of guessing at what they're eating.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not guessing, because a lot of the way they ask the questions on the questionnaires are pretty bad. It's kind of like, what have you done in the last, how much meat have you eaten in the last month?
Yeah.
And the person just has to guess.
Yeah,
and then
they don't know.
Yeah, and then the scientists or the researchers will do is that now becomes fact. So that guess that person gave is now fact.
Yeah.
So they eat this much meat. So then, if you're looking for the hypothesis that meat causes cancer, you're gonna focus in on how much meat are they eating.
Yeah.
And then subsequent cancer diagnosis. But there's so many variables in between. It's kind of like, well, how are they having that meat? Is it with ketchup? Is it with bread? Is it good quality meat? Then do they run?
Yeah.
Do they smoke? Do they drink? Are they doing all these things? So you can see from those numbers of variables, they're not being tested. So all you can come up with is a hypothesis.
Yeah.
So they start stating a hypothesis, which is meat causes cancer, and they produce a headline. So now people think meat causes cancer because they assumed that the person's done their due diligence on that research and has decided that paper's really worth looking at.
Yeah.
So now meat causes cancer.
Yeah.
But there's too many variables to know that. But that's not, I don't know isn't going to sell papers.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to sell. I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I'm not making any money from nutrition. No.
You only started though. Let me ask you, because this is something that I was saying last week when Martin was here about the 5 kg I lost and that, I never thought about, until you said it to me, about the psychology of dieting. Can you explain that for people like me?
Yeah,
basically?
I mean, the way I always like to start talking about psychology, if I'm trying to really help someone, because people do come into the pharmacy, and they know they need help, but they don't even know what question to ask. So you sort of pick up the cues, and we go and have a chat in the consultation room, and most of the time I can help them feel better, because I think people tend to. We don't discuss how many minds we seem to have.
Yeah.
We think our conscious mind that we're experiencing the world through, we think that's it.
That's it, yeah.
And that's us. And that, I would say that is the you. So that is Derek, is the sort of conscious one. But that's not the only one calling the shots. And it's not the only one influencing your decisions. There's at least two others. Freud introduced the idea with the id, superego, and the ego. But there's someone called Professor Steve Peters. He wrote the chimp paradox, and that's probably when I was first introduced to this idea. That you have the human brain, which is the conscious one that we experience the world through. Then you have, he calls it the chimp brain, and then you have the computer, So the computer is your values. So things that or your values and belief about the world. So things you've decided that are true, and also things that you value above others. So, for example, I know a lot of my values. The top one is probably going to be health.
Yeah.
Because I know if that stops, the whole game stops. So if my health goes, that's it. No more, nothing else. So obviously that's why it's easy for me to take it so seriously, because it matters so much to me. And the human and the chimp will refer to the computer. So that list of values and beliefs that I have. And that's how it will decide things. So a situation will occur, and I will have to make a decision of how to respond to it. And my chimp is much stronger, because if you think of the brain in 3 sections, you've got the central part of the brain. That there's a theory called the triune theory. So the central part of the brain is the lizard brain. So that's where your hunger is. And a lot of the drives and those sorts of things. And you can feel that. So for example, if you're hungry or really hungry, or let's say you can't breathe, everything else stops. Any other functioning of the brain stops until you get breath again. Then if you move out a layer of the brain, you get the mammalian brain. And that's what we would call the chimp brain. So that's where your emotions are. It's very powerful. And then on top of that, you have the cortex, and that's the latest addition, but it's very weak. So when it comes to nutrition, our human knows we want to eat better. And we kind of have an idea, if we just stop eating sugar, maybe have a few more vegetables, more good quality protein, less alcohol, I could do this. And then as soon as we start trying, it falls to pieces. And that's because, although the theory goes, you got your chimp on board. So you haven't convinced your chimp this is what you actually want to do. So your chimp will pretty much do what it wants, and it's stronger. So you can never control the chimp, but you have to learn to manage the chimp.
Yeah, and that's tough.
Very tough, because I still can't really manage mine properly, but it takes years to get good at it.
Yeah.
But I can control it much better than I used to be able to. But you need to get the chimp on board.
Right.
So we have to talk about psychology. We have to talk about what you've been valuing, and we have to talk about the fact that actually it's probably not your fault, because what programs the computer part of the brain is obviously everything you see.
Yeah.
So effectively the culture around you. And the culture in terms of food is very, let's say, carb-centric, particularly sugar-centric. Because I don't think this was originally done maliciously, but the big food companies, if you go up to the top of who owns all the food companies, so we're talking 80% of the supermarket, it's about 8 companies pretty much own the show. And if they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, all the processed foods you come across are pretty much all going to have the same stuff in them.
Yeah.
So we're putting sugar in them, we're putting salt in them, we're putting fat in them, we're taking fibre out, we're taking omega-3 out, and we're putting omega-6 in.
What's the purpose of taking that out? What's the purpose of taking fibre out of the food?
Fibre doesn't taste good. It tastes horrible.
I had a bowl of bran flakes this morning.
And you like them?
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, there's good.
You know me and cereal.
I do.
I'm on a cereal diet, and I like it. And
Well,
I'm staying there.
It's never just one component of the food that makes the taste,
course,
but they look for obviously this bliss point. That's how they define it. Because as moving through the sort of the mid 1900s, convenience became a big thing because now both parents were working.
Yeah.
So it had to be done fast and it had to taste good. So convenience food was born. And then as it's gone on, there's a science to hitting the bliss point. So what I would say or argue that food companies have done have turned processed food into drugs.
Yeah.
Because they know exactly down to us. This is where they've done a science on it to hit the parts that will release the most dopamine.
Right.
And dopamine's a quick fix. I can get into brain chemistry if you want to go into it, but you might not want to go into it.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time. We can go into the brain chemistry of it, but dopamine is obviously the one that is the main reward.
Yeah.
And that's what when we indulge in addictions, that's what we're looking for, is the dopamine hit. So it's not our fault that we don't know what to eat. Because if you've got all these companies all singing from the same hymn sheet, all providing the same inaccurate, let's say, educational marketing, like breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Yeah.
You have to have breakfast. And then you've got Coke saying a calorie is a calorie. So, you can have Coke as part of a healthy lifestyle. It's not true.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that says it's not true. Right. So they can sort of get away with it.
Yeah, it's muck anyway.
Yeah. So if we've been let's say our generation has been grandfathered into this idea that you can't skip a meal, you have to have 3 square meals. Yeah. That's going to be a fundamental belief that we have.
Yeah.
So your chimp is going to think that's what we have to do. We have to have all those meals.
Right.
So if I come along and say no, you don't, I could convince you're human quite easily.
Yeah.
But the thing, you need to convince your chimp and start to see the results and start to actually notice that it's true, because you're still going to have to resist the cultural idea that you have to eat all the time and having sugar's fine because it's not really that bad and it's just a calories in, calories out. Just eat less, move more. It's not working.
Yeah,
basically,
it's not working for.
We're getting sicker.
Yeah.
So you can't discuss. I don't think you can't discuss nutrition and not. It's the psychology of change.
Yeah.
If you want to change your behavior, we have to really get into how we're going to change it, because it's not enough for you to just know, because that's your human.
Yeah.
It rationally knows what to do. The chimp doesn't.
Yeah.
You need to emotionally feel what you need to do.
And speaking of psychology, because you're big into it, and we've talked about it before, and you've told me some things obviously I didn't know, and I'm not hugely into it. I should probably be more and look it up and things like that. But
Don't force it.
No, maybe not. Stoicism, right? So you talk about it a lot, an awful lot, and no, I know what stoic means in the the dictionary or whatever. I might have used the word before when I'm talking or writing or whatever, but what is the psychology of it, of stoicism?
Well, I pronounce it stoicism.
Well, that's because you're from Liverpool.
Could be.
And you don't speak well over it.
We don't know how to speak English. So it's interesting. CBT, which I know you were talking about, and I've actually done, that is based on stoicism.
Okay.
So if I'm going to get into it again now, we're going to have the big religion talk. So stoicism was sort of first originated from cynicism, which is another philosophy. So this is around Greek and Roman times. It was sort of, cynicism was from Greece, kind of, and then it developed into stoicism in Rome.
Okay.
And at the time, there were many different religions and many different beliefs and many different philosophies. Epicureanism is probably one of the ones that we use nowadays, which is basically hedonism. So you're just constantly trying to find dopamine. It's always pleasure. Whereas stoicism is I suppose the word stoic now means emotionless. You don't have any emotion. You can't read them. They have a poker face. But that's not the point. I would say stoicism is the way that you train the chimp.
Okay.
So probably the two biggest figures, if you're interested in, are Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. Yeah. Now, Marcus Aurelius was the emperor at the time. So if you've seen Gladiator, I know you're not a big fan, but he appears at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So he's an emperor, and we still have his meditations, it's called. So meditations. It's effectively his journal that he kept. And you can tell it wasn't supposed to be read by anybody else, because it's just him reminding himself how to live and guidance. Now,
diary, like?
Basically, yeah. So it was just reminders for himself. And if you imagine this is the emperor, and you look at Donald Trump, he's effectively an emperor. Yeah. Just does what he wants.
Yeah.
So that's what a lot of emperors did. Because if no one's saying no, why would you keep yourself, keep your own behavior and keep your ego and in check and those sorts of things? Whereas he was raised with stoicism and philosophy. He was actually, anyway, I won't get into it. But that's how he was raised.
That's your chimp.
It's not chimp. I'm like, he's messing this. So that he was considered one of the great four emperors of Rome, because he would manage to keep his ego in check. So, for example, if for his wars, he would sell off imperial materials. He wouldn't tax people. He would raise money himself. So it's things like that, because he kept his ego in check. And that was through the study of Stoicism. So this isn't just my theory, but it's one I agree with. Around the time of Rome, Christianity appeared. And I think it was Constantine just decided Christianity is going to be the thing. That's what we're going to do. So they hijacked the pagan festivals and created Christianity, and it spread across the West, which is obviously why Western culture is mainly based in Christianity. And then that basically hijacked everyone's belief system until probably mid-1800s, when we started to really think. I mean, Nietzsche obviously talks about God is dead and we've killed him. Yeah. And it's not a celebration. It's kind of a warning of what the hell are we going to do now? Yeah. And I think you can see that playing out. And I think that's why people struggle with mental health nowadays, is because we're too smart to believe in God, apparently. So it's kind of like it's not rational. Yeah. But as I was saying, our human knows God's not real. But our chimp still needs to believe in something. We still need to have a belief system. Yeah. So what do we have as a belief system? And I think our culture's going through a bit of a flux of what the hell do we believe in? What structure do we have? Yeah. And I think we're having a resurgence of Stoicism and the old philosophies.
And was that for you? Like, was that when you discovered it or read up about it and things like that? Was that your? I'm not going to say your big passion or whatever like that, but was it something like that was a comfort for you?
Oh yeah. Like, it was kind of, because I didn't know that's what was happening. Okay. I couldn't articulate the fact that I didn't know what the hell to believe in, and I didn't have any guidance, and I didn't know what to do. Because if you look at pop culture and social media, it's just pleasure seeking. And I think there's only so long you can live like that and realize, actually, this is quite empty. I'm still not feeling what I want to be feeling. So I just happened upon, I think it was Tim Ferriss, I got introduced to it through first, and it was Ryan Holiday. It's probably, so he's written Ego is the Enemy, The Obstacle is the Way, and Stillness is the Key. So 3 separate books, and that's probably the modern equivalent of Stoicism, so they're worth reading because he uses modern examples of people who did use it and people who didn't use it. And I think it's provided me with a framework, because you don't need these things when life's good. Yeah. Which is why, life's been good from the 1900s onwards. I mean, obviously we've had lots of bad things, but in terms of if you compare it to what it's always been before the Industrial Revolution, it's the culture's changed more in that 100 years than the tens of thousands of years we've been around. So it's a huge change. So our lives are much easier than they were. And I think that means we can start to discard, or we can start questioning and then discard things like religion. Yeah. And we don't need all that. It's just childish, sort of silly beliefs. But okay, fine, well done. You've criticized religion. Now what? Yeah. What are you going to replace it with? You kind of expect people to come up with their own value system in their own lifetime. Yeah. Whereas most people, me included, I don't have the intellect for that. I can't do that. Yeah. So I need a framework, and that is what Stoicism provided for me. It was kind of, this is what you do in this situation. This is what you do in this situation. And a lot of it is about control, and how a lot of our anxieties and concerns come from thinking we can control the results of things or other people. Whereas the more you sit with the idea that actually you can't, the only thing you can control is your reactions and your response to things. Yeah. If you can focus on that, that's when you can start to find wisdom. And external things don't start to bother you anywhere near as much. Because actually, I can't control that. I just have to roll with it. Yeah. I do think the idea that you can get something from, a philosophy or a way of thinking, and you can realize that minor little things that you thought when you were a teenager you had to have when you were an adult, and that important, that's a great thing to have, but like you said,
it must have some sort of level of retraining your brain to really get into it, because for me, I'm not a religious person or whatever like that, so what are my belief systems? Who knows, like, really? I don't know. So
that's a very good point, because we all assume that we know what we believe.
Yeah, but we don't.
Because our human, like, for example, like, I don't believe in God. So our human might think, I don't believe in God. But then I defy someone to have a sick child and not start praying to somebody and hoping to somebody that they're okay and something happens. And you think, well, who am I praying to? So do I not believe in God?
My dad says that he knew a man. He always tells the story of this man who was late 70s when he was on his deathbed, like, and he would be a kind of guy, particularly back when it was maybe in Ireland in the 70s. I think it was maybe 60s or 70s. And he'd be the kind of guy that'd be cursing the people going to church and, all this stuff. But all of a sudden, when he was there, it became like, oh, Jesus save me, or whatever it was, So there is, do we or do we not? I at the moment I don't, but we'll see what happens down the line. Other things that make you feel good, like that make you feel happy. If you kind of mentioned them all, because we ran through jiu-jitsu, stoicism. Obviously you like to keep fit. Is there anything else? Probably time to say Marta.
Oh yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So it's always going to be relationships.
Yeah, of course.
It's always, because there's only so much you can do in your own head. There's only so many things you can focus on yourself. There has to be connection with somebody. You have to speak to someone who's on the same wavelength, because that helps you feel. Everyone has to have a sense of belonging.
Yeah,
and that's obviously a value. Whether you like it or not, really. So you need other people, and you need to make sure you speak to them and go and discuss it with them. Because you just need that sense of belonging. So it's always going to be people.
Yeah.
So particularly with Marta, every evening, as best we can, we'll just have tea time, we call it.
Yeah.
So we'll just have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Because it sounds, you think if you're living together, you don't need to catch up. It's not true.
No.
Especially when you're trying to raise a baby.
Yeah.
So once Oscar's gone to bed, we have 10-15 minutes, and it normally ends up being half an hour to an hour.
Yeah.
And we just chat away. And it's as close to a date as we can really muster regularly.
Well, like, it's a good idea, and not a lot of people would do that, and like you say, everybody thinks because they live together that they'll they're keeping in touch with each other, but they're not really, passing each other on the stairs kind of thing.
It seems too simple.
Yeah.
Because you think, just a cup of tea, what's that going to do? You'd be amazed the difference it makes.
Because it's one of those things that one might be having a bad day, just needed to get something off the chest, whatever it was. I introduced this kind of last week as my first guest, and I don't know why I did, because it's going to be one of those things that I'm nervous about. But is there any questions you have for me? You probably don't know, and I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to talk for a second.
Okay.
It's one of those things because myself and Josh are quite close. We text each other, like, every day, every other day, whatever it is. And we obviously go to train together. We partner up in there. So we talk about an awful lot, and he knows an awful lot about me. It's different down the line. I'll be asking people that, and they won't know anything. So if you don't, it's fine, and we'll just move on.
For me, it's always like we probably have too many questions.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting.
How are you finding the podcast?
Yeah, to be honest, it's very, it's exciting, like, and I will honestly say that I'm not a kind of guy that gets excited that often, and people who know me know. I'm really into it. I'm really into the idea of bringing a mental health to the kind of forefront of my life, because it's been there in the background all along, and I've never, maybe took me a while to speak about it, got the blog going, and now this. I'm also just interested in, I think I said this in the podcast already, I'm just interested in just chatting to people. You mightn't get an hour and a half to sit down and just chat to someone about their life, their different, learning about nutrition today from you, learning about philosophy. These are things we don't really get a chance to talk about, so I'm thrilled with it, like, at the moment. And like I said, the feedback back we're getting is just kind of like, it would just make you want to kind of keep going and keep doing it, and it's deadly,
I think it's important what you're doing, because I think so. I mean, obviously coming from a healthcare point of view, seeing the suicide rates in Ireland and the depression and the anxiety, obviously I see the medications everyone's on, and the depression and anxiety is just rampant. Now, it could be a case that we talk about it more.
Yeah.
And for doctors, it's kind of a, do you want to try this? You know, it's an easy fix. There's not many downsides. But the money that the HSE has or is willing to invest in psychology and counselling and things like that for people is minimal.
Yeah.
So no one really, there's no outlet.
No,
and
not,
there are Samaritans and there's people to call and things like that. So there are some, but it's just kind of, it's providing, I think this is providing just a platform for people to talk about it.
Yeah,
and it's huge.
It's massive. I listened to a couple of mental health podcasts. Sorry, kind of in the build up to this, and it is just kind of inspiring to listen to a couple of people, or more in a studio or in a bedroom like this, and just chatting about it, and you can relate to it. It's not like I said, I've had no problem talking about it for a while, but I'm 37 years of age. I'm old enough now to feel a little bit more comfortable doing it. If I was 21 and had the problems that I did when I was, I wouldn't have spoken to anyone about it.
Yeah.
It just would happen, and you don't know what would happen then. Like, it could lead to the worst possible, thing.
I think another, obviously, when you're talking about age, is when you're 21. How many of your friends are going to have any wisdom?
Yes, it's true. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like, they don't even know what's going on. They don't know themselves yet. So that they might not have access to people who've been through that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't have, this idea of elders and people that they can talk to.
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't want to talk to their parents because they just argue with them, or maybe they're ashamed because they don't want to tell their mates because, at a young age, it's kind of, there's a lot more ego, and it's kind of like, oh, you're sad, or you don't know how to do this, or whatever it might be. You're weak if you have issues and things like that. So just having this to listen to and hearing two grown men who struggled with anxiety and their own mental health, but they're still managing really well. Exactly,
yeah. And I will say, like, I myself and John, who's obviously doing a lot of he's the silent partner, the background work he's doing is great. We've noticed, like, John is 23, I think.
And he's actually wise.
He's wise.
Considering what I just said, he's actually quite wise.
John is very, very mature, and
he's like a Yoda character.
He is kind of a Yoda character, and it's great to have him on board for it. But we've noticed that on our Facebook page in particular, the age difference between the people who are getting involved or like it or whatever, it's from it's huge, like from teenage late teens right up maybe 70-year-olds. That's hugely important, because it's not when I talk about when 37 and I'm comfortable talking about it now, but if you're 60 now, back when you were 30, nobody ever spoke about it.
No.
It was just not done, right? So if you're 60 now, 65, whatever it is, you may not have a way of expressing it, and you might be, because depression comes at any age. It's not a thing that it doesn't select you at a certain age, and you're like the army or something. It's, these people will have it. They won't know how to speak about it. So if this is something that helps one person along the way, it's class. Like, it's helping me, so that's one person anyway. But other people besides that, I'd be thrilled. Look, this has been excellent. What time are we at? We're at. It's the longest one, yeah. Congratulations. That's what you wanted. You came in here earlier on.
I thought we should make it longer next time. You could do 3 parts.
We'll do 3 parts.
We'll do 3 hours and we'll have 3 parts.
We're going to talk about the chemical part of the brain the next time.
Yes.
Because I didn't want to cut that off. Well, I did want to cut it off.
Yeah, I ramble.
You didn't ramble.
Do you know what? If I can't put people to sleep in jiu-jitsu, I can damn sure put them to sleep by talking to them.
Listen, he can put people to sleep in jiu-jitsu. Trust me. He always has with me, for sure. Listen, if people, I know you don't have a Facebook page or whatever, but if people wanted to contact you to talk about nutrition, like I said, when your Facebook page goes up, I'll give it a shout out. But if they wanted to contact you, how did they do it?
It probably email's the best way. So it's NutriPharm. It's PH, obviously, because I'm a pharmacist.
Very good.
Do you see what I did?
Nice.
NutriPharm89@gmail.com.
Cool. NutriPharm89@gmail.com. That it?
Yeah. Well, also, I need to speak to Kelvin. Hopefully he's listening to this. He can help me with his marketing stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm no good at.
Listen, in 2 podcast time, he's going to be on. Well, I hope he's going to be on. He said he'd come on, so hopefully.
He's great. He's just happy all the time.
Yeah, he's great.
He's a joy to be around. He'll be a much more light-hearted podcast than mine.
Yeah, I probably will.
Yeah.
No. Well, this is good. This is fun.
Yin and yang.
Yeah, this is it. Look, I'm going to just run through a couple of the social medias. I know I do this every time and I'm boring the life out of you. Oh, sorry. First of all, I want to thank John, who, silent partner. One of these days I'm going to get him out here during one of these recording sessions, so we get a bit of crack going. I want to thank, as always, Ger, my mum, my dad and my grandfather. Go to our YouTube channel, which is the Weekly Wheatley. Facebook, the same. Twitter, I think it's Wheatley _the. Instagram is the other way around, so it's Wheatley the Weekly. I'm glad I'm glad I let these people pick this name, because it's easy for me to say every time. Okay, run through. We're on Spotify, Apple, Podbean, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Google Podcast and Radio Public. That's all. Thank you very much all for listening. Josh, thank you very much for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
It was brilliant. So that's it. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.